Hey everybody, it's Kerry, and I've got to take this time right now to tell you about my friend Cody. You see, Cody's the man who is behind those sweet headers that Nick and I have at both our team Twitter, our individual Twitters, our Facebooks, and even our YouTube channel. Cody's a graphic designer, one of the best graphic designers I've ever seen. He's done graphic design work specifically for professional wrestling, branding, television, and feature films. He's worked with promotions across the Southeast, including Scenic City Invitational, Anarchy Wrestling, Platinum Championship Wrestling, Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, which is one of my favorite events to work for, Georgia Premier Wrestling, and many, many more. He's also designed for television shows on networks such as the CW, HBO, Showtime, MTV, BET, and the IFC. If you would like to go on and make that extra step to give that nice little flair of individuality along with professionalism, you should contact him. And you can do that through a multitude of ways. Cody Wynn Designs at KODYWYNNE.com, Facebook.com/Uncle Cody, and not to mention Gmail, because, who doesn't like to get a nice email professionally sent from one professional to another? And that's going to be over at KODYWYNNE@gmail.com. Now go on, take the extra step, and make it look like you're a professional wrestler. Go on and take the extra step to show everybody you care enough about yourself to invest in yourself, and you want everyone else to see that. Again, Cody Wynn Designs. Now, to the show.
Dog Days is a pro wrestling podcast that may include themes such as graphic language, references to violence, and other adult themes. The views expressed are those of its host and guests and do not reflect that of its sponsors or Pro Wrestling Ponderings. Listener discretion is advised.
Oh man, super late to the party. I've been meaning to record this podcast forever. Couple days out from the Scenic City Invitational, I talked with my good friend Dan the Dragon Wilson. I actually recorded about 15 minutes of this podcast, and then my recorder and phone crashed, and the call got dropped. So we had to go back, re-record all of it. But we have a really good talk, breaking down the brackets of SCI, talking about my match that we've got headed up in there. As always, I'm still messing around with new content. I was able to drop a video commercial for CZW Dojo Wars. I got that in the inbox today after a couple weeks from Emil. There's no audio on it, so if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, you're not going to be able to see that. You're only going to be able to see that commercial at Carnies on YouTube, youtube.com/Carnies. Another quick podcast, not a lot of stuff I'm able to talk about right now. Just know that everything is good in the Music City as we've been busy again. Took the last month off outside of some pretty close bookings to heal up our bodies and minds, spend time with our wives. But starting last week, we're back at it again, hitting the road. Make sure to check out our schedule. Go to our Pro Wrestling Tees and Fully Gimmicked sites. And go on and check out SCI. We're going to hit some really cool details about the history of the tournament. But I'm going to go on and cut it out here. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. Make sure you talk to me on Twitter at CarrieAwful. I got a burp.
What is up, Internet Wrestling community? Steve Guy here, ring announcer for Absolute Intense Wrestling, or as you may know it, AIW, and one of the voices that you can hear every week on AIW's podcast, The Card is Going to Change. Add us to your weekly listens and download us from pretty much wherever you stream podcasts from, whether it be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Libsyn, The platforms seem to be endless for us. It's AIW's The Card is Going to Change, and it's an all-access, behind-the-scenes look on what it's like running an independent wrestling promotion today. Also, come visit us for one of our live events in Cleveland, Ohio. For ticketing information, head to shop.aiwrestling.com. Or, if you can't make it up to one of the shows, then purchase one of our previous shows on DVD or MP4 download streaming, featuring, of course, your favorite tag team, the Carnies, in action in some of those shows. For all of that, head to smartmarkvideo.com. Once again, it's shop.aiwrestling.com for ticketing information, or smartmarkvideo.com for our past shows, and of course, AIW's The Card is Going to Change. Follow us on Twitter at AIWrestling. And now, folks, back to your show.
Three, two, one. Everybody, this is Kerry Awful, and this is Dog Days, putting out a late edition of Dog Days to hype up SCI this weekend in the beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee area. And on the phone with me today is a friend of mine for the last few years. What you don't know is we just recorded this whole introductory and lost about 10 minutes of audio. The one and the only, synonymous with both great managing and having his fingers knuckle deep in the Southern wrestling scene, Dan the Dragon Wilson. Dan, how are you?
I am fantastic, Kerry. Thank you for having me on. I'm going to have a good time talking about the SCI tonight. We have known each other for a few years. I've always felt we kind of shared some similar philosophies, and so I'm really looking forward to digging into this episode of Dog Days with you.
And I'm pleased for you working with my schedule. I know I'm calling this late. It's got to be hectic for you. It's got to be almost 11 o'clock your time, about 10:30 your time right now. On the call that we were on that dropped, we covered some bases with Empire Wrestling and how SCI ran close to parallel of their ending times. I erroneously had thought that it started after Empire or close to the end date of Empire, but they ran parallel for initial time before Empire unfortunately had to close its doors. What we were talking about originally was the origin of SCI. And if you would right now, if you could please just catch everybody up on the basis, the birthplace, the conception of the Scenic City Invitational for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to give a more condensed version this time. But so Ace Rockwell is the founder of the SCI. That's his vision, his idea. Scott Hensley is his partner in that, and now they've expanded the team to include Dylan Hales and some other folks. So they really are building this first-class operation, but it really all started back to, of course, Ace Rockwell and I trained together. We broke into business together and have been friends since even before that. We actually wrestled in our backyard on a trampoline when we were in high school. And we decided we were going to get trained. We were going to become real pro wrestlers. And so we all trained together under the Big Wood in 1999. And I started getting work pretty quickly thereafter because I wasn't wrestling. I was an announcer, a manager here and there. And then Ace finished his training after I had already started working. And then, we started traveling the road together and stuff. And so, we had to go lots of different places for good wrestling because there was never good wrestling in Chattanooga. Chattanooga at one time was a hotbed. You go back to the 50s, 60s, early to mid-70s, the Mid-America, Gulas promotions, Welch promotions, they had a lot of success in those times. But towards the mid-70s, late 70s, early 80s, what many wrestling historians blame the fall of Chattanooga wrestling on was the push of George Gulas, the son of promoter Nick Gulas, as the top babyface. He was not physically in the same category as most other top babyfaces, nor was his in-ring capabilities in the same realm as other top babyfaces. So most people say that the push of him killed the territory. And from that point forward, with the exception of like Ron West coming in and trying to get something started every now and again. There was not much happening in Chattanooga except the bottom of the barrel garbage wrestling. And so when we broke into the business, even before that, we would go to the local shows and see it firsthand. It was just like, this is indie wrestling. Well, fuck it, you know. Like, why would we even try? But as we broke into the business, went to Wild Side, got to go out and travel all over the Southeast, work these different places, and see some bigger, better shows, see how they were ran. Like, oh, this is how it's done. Boy, it would be nice to bring something like that back to our hometown. And we tried it initially with NWA Chattanooga, which was a show that Ace and I ran from, what was it, like 2009, 2010. And we did like monthly shows in the Chattanooga area, and they all did pretty well. You know, we never made a ton of money, but we never lost any money. When we closed it, we had like $250 in the account. So it was like, hey, profit.
That's a win as far as I'm concerned, especially for a Southern Wrestling Fed.
Right. But, you know, it just didn't work out. We had to switch venues, and that really killed us. Like, our whole audience was used to coming to one venue, and when we moved, they didn't follow. And so Empire kind of built from the ashes of that. Drew Delight was involved with us there, and so he built up Empire Wrestling. And so, you know, we got to see our dreams start to come to fruition of good wrestling in Chattanooga, some of which we had a hand in, either directly or indirectly. With Empire, I was always more of a consultant and an advisor, and Ace kind of the same. And you know, we performed on the cards as well, but, you know, as far as the backstage stuff. But, you know, our hand was always in there a little bit. And so Ace, you know, was always a big mark for the King of the Indies tournament. Like, that's what he tells in his history of the SCI. He always says, you know, I love the King of the Indies. And he always thought it would be cool to do something like that in the South. And other promotions had tried with little success or fanfare, but it was just like the right time, the right climate with social media and everything. And Scott Hensley had a really good eye at the time for, like, who was coming up. You know, not in the area, but outside of the area, your Congo Kongs, your Mooses. And so, you know, where that outside indie influence kind of came from him, the idea was like, okay, let's craft this super indie tournament, for lack of a better word, for the South, feature some of the better guys in the region. It's like, there's been great talent here for years that's as good or better, in my opinion, than talent that is hyped and featured in other places. But they're regionalized, so they don't get that exposure. So that it was kind of the idea, like, let's mix the best from this area with the best from some other areas and see if people respond to it, and thankfully they did.
Well, and I would say so, because I remember when the first tournament had happened, it was over at the old Empire building. It had this, what I would say for the South, an eclectic mix of talent. Now, we had our normal names of guys like Jimmy Rave and Chip Day, and some of the younger talent of the time who is now, I would say, almost Mr. SCI and Gunnar Miller, KT Hamill, people of the likes, mixed in with, as you mentioned, Congo Kongs and Mooses. People that Moose maybe would be commonly referred to with Southern Wrestling, but he departed us for greener pastures, as some would say, at an early time in his career. But it was all brought down and mixed together, and the response for it after the tournament had happened was pretty big. I feel like I would never condone wrestling piracy, but I feel that was one of those things that once it hit the internet, it just spread and spread and spread. Now, we had talked in the previous recording before my recorder crashed about some of the marquee moments of that, one of which would be Jimmy Rave and Gunnar Miller, with Jimmy being the nefarious heel that he is. If you would, could you kind of give a quick glimpse to anyone who's unfamiliar with SEI with the first tournament, some of the moments that you think that kind of put everybody on notice, made people say, oh, there's more to this than just a tournament with people thrown together, having matches, something that made that tournament stick out to maybe the internet consumer of wrestling?
There was a few things. I think some people loved it, some people hated it as far as that section of the fan base, but Tank versus Congo Kong was a real eye-opener for a lot of people. And the fact, even to the locals, that Tank went down clean to this monster, in what was just such a brutal, hard-hitting match with these two heavyweights who could really move. And people responded to that. I thought that was really, really memorable. The rise of Gunnar Miller, that was only his second year in the business.
Wow.
He was as green as grass. And you look here this many years later, and the improvement is amazing, but he was already a natural then. And he defeated Chip Day in the first round with a spear, like Chip was coming off the top with a crossbody, and Gunnar hit him with a spear in midair and pinned him. I think that was a shocker for a lot of people, and really, like, immediately set the tone that Gunnar Miller was there to stay. But then he went on to the second round to face Jimmy, and Jimmy has a history of concussions, and being the nefarious heel that he is, the sneaky bastard, he fell down and hit his head and feigned a concussion. Like, everybody thought it was legit. They were getting the medical staff out there ready to stop the match. Right as the referee's about to call it, Gunnar Miller standing over him like a sportsman-like athlete, checking on him. Jimmy pops up, small packages in 1, 2, 3. And so Jimmy had a lot of heat there. But then that final match, dude, the final match, 4-way, it was Jimmy, Anthony Henry. Now I'm blanking. You gotta help me out here.
Was Congo? Did Congo make it down to the final round?
Yes, Congo made it to the final. And who was the fourth? Was it Corey Hollis? It was Corey Hollis. Yeah, and that was just a great match. I think that opened a lot of eyes. I think Anthony Henry's performances in the tournament opened a lot of eyes. He took on Joey Lynch in a non-tournament match in the second round, and I believe he lost to Jimmy in the first round. But he really showed out that year. Like, he came to win, and then in the second year put on an even more impressive performance. And as a result, probably a big favorite to win it this year.
I would think so too. I'm glad you mentioned Anthony Henry, because I remember I had seen his name on wrestling cards or result sheets or Facebook, but never really had gone more to dive in on it until I talked to Jimmy Rave about the match itself, and he told me, he's like, hey, Anthony Henry's someone you need to watch. And I feel that was the general response of a lot of people, because I felt that after the original SCI that I started to see Anthony pop up more and more and more and more. With Jimmy winning, of course, the first SCI, we hop on over to the second year, and boy, what a year difference makes. The fan base of the tournament itself was even unique. Whereas the first SCI had a few out-of-town guests, I would say that the second SCI probably doubled that, along with an almost cult-like following on Twitter from what I would call highly respected, intelligent fans, or Dylan Hales might even joke and say buzz generators. Why don't we go on and jump into the second SCI here? I've got a couple of notes on that. One of them being Joey Lynch and the phenomenal performance he put in that got everybody talking about him. Not to mention, we had two very respected independent wrestling names that came into it. One being Chris Hero Cassius Ono, who had phenomenal matches with Kevin Matthews and Chip Day. I think that's or Kevin Matthews, I'm sorry, Kyle Matthews and Chip Day, needless to say. And then, of course, someone who I would almost say is equally as synonymous as Gunnar Miller is with SCI now, in Matt Riddle. Why don't you touch base about some of the changes, both aesthetically and in the talent pool wise, and even in the fan wise, of the growth of the second SCI?
Oh yeah, there were lots of changes for the second year. I think the second year is where we saw, oh man, this can be more than we even envisioned. You know, the first year I think was about par for expectations, maybe a little bit of a disappointment in terms of turnout. It was still a good turnout, but I think with the time and the effort they put in, they were expecting a little more. And on the second night it was packed. The first night there was some empty seats. I mean, there was still a good crowd, but you know, it could have been better. But the second year, I think the same thing happened, but on a larger scale in terms of attendance. So they moved it over to the East Hamilton High School in Ottawa, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Chattanooga, and beautiful facility, first-class facility, and they've been a great partner in the event. And part of the proceeds, of course, go to them as a fundraiser. So, and when you're dealing with that many levels of great talent, to even still be able to do a fundraising portion of it is nice. So that tells you kind of how successful it's been. But as far as the talent pool, I think the second year, they looked at bringing in some more outside guys, some more guys that were not necessarily synonymous with the region. And that's where Matt Riddle, as you mentioned, came in and got over huge. I mean, I think that's maybe the most memorable thing from that year is just the rise of Matt Riddle and how quickly all of those fans, not just the smart fans or the fans that drove or flew in, but even the local fans who packed out the bleachers, who were just, off the street, casual wrestling fans, he captivated everyone. And so I think this could be his year. Like, if the fan support is anything to say, I mean, obviously Tank is the sentimental favorite because Tank is retiring this year. So I think the fans all want to see Tank go all the way more than anybody. But beyond that, I think Matt Riddle is the clear favorite. So that was cool. Seeing Leo Rush was pretty cool. He was in and out pretty quick, but had a great showing in the first round with Anthony Henry. We also saw Chris Hero just step up as a leader and a veteran. He was such a pleasure to be around that whole weekend. Was just taking guys under his wing and teaching everybody things here and there, and was just all on board with the tournament. Went out of his way to make sure that the Gunnar Miller in particular came out of that match smelling like a rose in the final, and I was super impressed with him.
Absolutely, and with everything that you said, I feel that there's better distribution for the second year, also for the fans that weren't in attendance that wanted to follow through with it, and I think that helped it grow tremendously to SCI that we're about to see this weekend. But this year they did something different. They did the SCI Rumble, and I believe it was in Saudi Daisy, wasn't it?
It was my alma mater, Sunny Daisy High School, my hometown.
And they provided a unique concept that if SCI is the equivalent of WrestleMania for Southeast Indies, that the SCI Rumble was going to carry the same kind of weight. It had a nice eclectic mix of talent in that, including yours truly. We did battle with Iceberg and Tank and the Lynch brothers, with both Tank and both brothers being in SCI this year. And what was a cool moment for me, because I finally got to lock up with Berg and Tank, and as a tag team wrestler and a guy that's tried to go out there and do the South proud, that match has a very, very special place in my heart. But the real story of the SCI Rumble was the winner would get a spot in the tournament, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And for anyone out there that might have lived under a rock, if you could, who won the Battle Royal for that night?
Oh, that was the Strong Style Psycho Tank.
And of course, in true Tank fashion, he cut I don't want to say uplifting, but he cut a promo that put a fire inside of my ass, and I was sitting over at the merch table. Because he got to call his spot, he got to call his opponent. He actually fended off 3 members of AWE's The Hierarchy in Murder One, Adrian Armour, and Chip Day. And what most would say is not only unlikely but unheard of that he was able to survive that storm. Finally getting, I believe Murder was the last one eliminated to secure a spot and secure to pick his call, if you will. Now most guys in a tournament setting would try to go down the list and figure out what's the easiest way I can get to the second round. But as you and I both know very well with Tank, the easy way is never the way that Tank chooses, and he announced that he wanted to face Matt Riddle. And when you're calling a shot against a guy who got over so well at the previous SCI, but also calling out one of the true faces of modern independent wrestling, that's a hell of a shot to call.
Yeah, I mean, Riddle, obviously one of the toughest guys in the sport. He was on fire in UFC, left there due to a mild controversy that most people supported him in. and as a result, transitioned over to wrestling, and it was very successful for him. He's got that natural charisma. I think in many ways he reminds me of Kerry Von Erich. Like, he just got
Absolutely.
that babyface vibe, and it's not a put on. It's him. Like, I hung out with him all weekend last year, and hope to get to chat with him again this year. He's just the most chill, down to earth guy. Like, that, what you see is what you get with him. He's a consummate babyface, and it's natural, so that's what makes it real, and that's why people invest in it. But they also know this guy's tough. He puts a little credibility in there because he has that UFC background. They know this isn't some guy that's a pretender. This is the real deal, and Tank wants the real deal, and he's going in there with him, and they're going to throw down. It's going to be good.
With everything that's on the line for Tank, saying that his impending doom of retirement coming around the corner, it's hard not to think that Tank, if he's going to go out, he's going out guns blazing, and he's going to do so by running through Matt Riddle, and then the next 2 rounds to get to the final and claim Mr. SCI this year. Now, we started kind of backwards on the tournament brackets with Tank and Riddle, but what we're going to do is we're going to go down a list of some of these potential matchups. Some of them are good friends of mine that you may not be familiar with. Some of them are going to be people that you're more familiar with than myself. But the first match that we're going to go through is the one that the winner of Riddle and Tank will have to go to, and that's going to be Gunnar Miller and Shane Marks. As we mentioned earlier, Gunnar Miller's coming in as the previous SCI winner. He was a University of Tennessee Chattanooga football player, has been having dominant showings with I'm getting tongue-tied, with Chuck G. Bailey down over at the Renaissance Anarchy, or Modern Anarchy, whatever you want to call it, formerly Why We Wrestle under Danny Only's watch. And he's going to be taking on Shane Marks. Now, Shane Marks was at the SCI Rumble, if I'm not mistaken, but he's someone that I'm personally unfamiliar with. For anyone listening that might also be unfamiliar with him, what can you tell us about him?
Oh, Shane Marks has been around for years and is really one of the most underrated guys in the area, in my opinion. Always has been. His look is very basic. He doesn't stand out. But the second the bell rings, he is so smooth and crisp with everything. He wrestled a 60-minute Iron Man match a couple of years ago at Platinum Championship Wrestling with Jeter, the 400-pound Jeter, and it was fucking awesome. Shane Marks has done a tour of Denmark, believe it or not.
What a unique place. That's not something I would commonly associate with wrestling, but it definitely shows that he's internationally traveled and tested on that. For Shane Marks, Gunnar Miller might be an intimidating factor coming into the first round, considering he's probably an odds-on favorite to try to repeat the SCI this year. As far as the match itself goes, are you leaning one way or the other opposed to who you think is going to get the nod on that match?
Miller's the favorite, clearly. I haven't seen a guy rise like that in many years, and my days of dealing and developing talent go back to the early Wildside days when we were the WCW development territory. I've seen your AJ Styleses and your Dash Wilders and Xavier Woods and Gunnar Chad Lales all come up from being incredibly green to maturing into stars. And I don't know if I've ever seen a guy rise as quickly as Gunnar Miller in terms of getting all of the key points of being a superstar. It's scary. Like I say it in commentary and anarchy all the time. He never makes the same mistake twice, and that is a shoot. He's a student, and he's a hustler, and you see him in the gym, and he's a monster.
Yeah, he's built like a brick shithouse, man. It looks like you could try to stab the guy, and the knife would just break on his pecs.
It really does, like some Terminator shit. But yeah, so I think he's clearly the favorite, but you can never count Shane Marks out. A guy that wily, that crafty, who's been around that long, has some tricks up his sleeve, and if Gunnar underestimates him, we might see a big upset there.
Moving on to this next match here, we have a Battle of the Daredevils with the bad boy Joey Janela, and then Darby Allin of Uncle John's friends from WWN Live. Now, Joey Janela is also an indie standout in his own right, making appearances at places like CZW, Game Changer Wrestling, AIW. I mean, if you name a Fed on the indies today, and Joey Janela has been there, made a commotion, probably had a video gone viral, and then left, burning the building down. He's not scared to take risks. His rafter climb off of a ladder at CZW in a match with Leo Rush, a former SCI participant, where he just drops and free falls an elbow through a table on the outside to the concrete, is the things that highlight videos are based around. Now, that's not to discredit Darby Allin at all. Now, Darby Allin is coming off of an elbow injury, I believe, received at the hands of one all-ego Ethan Page over at Evolve. Darby Allin is the definitive Death Wish wrestler. He has made risks and gambles with his body trying to secure victory that I don't feel comfortable watching even at times. I mean, he is a spectacle and a half. Now, for people who are unfamiliar with him, he is very calm and collective and a man of soft-spoken words. But when he's inside the ring, he is otherworldly. Most likely going to look to utilize that coffin drop where it's almost like a trust fall senton that comes at God knows how many angles. He's also well-versed in Lucha Libre. And to me, this is going to be a match made in Evil Knievel hell. Any thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, I think it might be the match I'm looking forward to most from a curiosity factor because, as a booker, I try to keep up with the guys that are making waves. I don't have time to follow every indie show and who's being pushed where and what have you. But, if I see guys lots of people are talking about, I generally try to check them out. And I think Janela is what a super creative guy. He's found a way to get out there and be different. It's so important now, more than ever in 2017 and moving into 2018. Being different is what is going to make you stand out in this business because there's so many cookie-cutter types.
Absolutely.
Janela is not one of those, and he's doing it all on his own. And I love the stuff he's done with Game Changer Wrestling. I'm excited to see it. And Allen is just a nut. He's a daredevil. He has no regard for his own body. He makes 1993 Mick Foley look like fucking Ronnie Garvin grabbing a headlock. You know what I mean?
I feel like this match should be booked as Paul Heyman's modern dream for ECW if he ever had the money and initiative to book it, because it has that reckless nature to it. It's got that anything could possibly happen in this match. Hell, for all we know, even though SCI is traditionally a family show, I wouldn't be surprised if some foreign objects potentially came into play in this match.
Yeah, I think that's what people want to see. I know they're real touchy about that at the school there, but you got those two guys, it's going to be unpredictable, so who knows?
Moving on to this next match, as we mentioned earlier, Anthony Henry's had impressive performances in both the first and second SCI, and in his match he's taking on a SCI newcomer, a personal friend of mine who unceremoniously took the AWE tag team titles in the most recent Follow the White Rabbit with his tag team partner Evan Jalesko. He is a longtime ace of the Midwest St. Louis area region. He is the Stiff Robo Ginger, former guest on Dog Days, the Gary J. Now, what I can tell you about Anthony Henry, we've covered already in this, but of course there's just so much more that goes into Anthony. His run with the PWX World title, his appearances at CZW, the fact that he's being flown to the Northeast on a regular basis. This is a guy that everybody is watching. Once you've cracked that nut of traveling all up and down the coast on someone else's dime, making your name, collecting belts, putting people on the injured list, getting more money at the payout window, that's got to put you as one of the favorites of the tournament. But that's not to discredit Gary J at all. I've seen Gary J survive the most hellacious ass kickings known to man. I've seen him get powerbombed into brick walls. I've seen him get German suplexed into the post from the apron of a ring and still get up, because Gary J has no quit in his heart. He's a man that survives. If an atomic bomb were to drop today, two things would be certain. Cockroaches and Gary J would still be alive to walk this earth and probably give somebody a knife edge chop like Gary J is famous for. Any thoughts on this match?
Gary J is a guy who's been looking for that breakout moment, I think, in the last couple of years, and Anthony Henry's a guy who has been an all-star in the last two tournaments. So Jay has a great opportunity to immediately stake his claim by beating Anthony. I've heard a lot of good things about Gary. I've seen a couple of his matches. Had him booked at one point for an Anarchy show back when the early days of Why We Wrestle, when I first took over the book there and was trying to get things reorganized, and something happened and he had to cancel and never really got back around to being able to work out anything where he's going to be in the area. But heard nothing but great things about him, and from what I've seen, it backs up everything you said. He's tough as nails, and Anthony's going to hit him hard, and they call him the stiff Robo Ginger, so I imagine Gary's going to hit him hard back.
And that's exactly where I wanted to follow up on this. Out of all the matches, outside of only Riddle and Tank, I guarantee that this will be the hardest, no pun intended with Gary's moniker, stiffest, as some wrestling fans would call it, match of the tournament. I've seen Anthony strike. He's a superb striker. And Gary J's up-ground striking, or upper body striking, his chops, his elbows, are like sledgehammers coming at your face. And I can attest to that from first-hand experience. I've been in the ring with both these guys. Actually, I was in the ring with both these guys literally last weekend. And easily to say that neither of them are scared to go above and beyond the means to put someone out. But they're also both resilient enough to keep getting up. Hell, I think Anthony Henry powerbombed Gary J off the stage onto all of our bodies at one point. And Gary got up to go on to win the match later. And that's with 4 teams, eight bodies in it. When you take it down to just 2 guys to focus in, that's less worries that they have. I think this is going to be the war of attrition out of all the matches that are listed on the card. This thing, I think, could even end in a time limit draw. God knows. But it's going to be something that I'm going to keep a close eye on. Because, I mean, it's hard for me not to keep an eye on this. Whether singles or tags, these guys are everywhere. So I know that the outcome of this might give me a better strategy next time I'm in the ring. Moving on to the next match. We're coming to a styles clash opposed to a complementary style battle. We're looking at the high flyer Jason Cade and then the Lone Star Kurt Stallion. I'm familiar and friends with both these guys. I'd wrestled Jason Cade a couple years ago at the FIP Fallout 6-man tournament in the first round matchup. We ended up winning, but Jason Cade came out of that whole tournament a star. Mostly for his, I mean, the angles in ways that he'll fly at you are very unconventional. When you say the word high flyer, you kind of have a preconceived notion inside of your head. And then you see Jason Cade do a springboard 450 double stomp to your face. And then you realize you're on the ground trying to realize, you know, who you are, where you are, what your name is. And Jason Cade's up and going at it again for the next dive. I think that he's most commonly known for his recent appearances at PWG, trained by the world-famous Norman Smiley. Class act human being, phenomenal in-ring competitor. He has mentors like Sami Callihan. You can catch him all over the place, whether it's Reseda or at one of the Pro Wrestling Revolver shows that Sami Callihan runs. On and off again for WWN Live at a multitude of events for them. And kind of being a world traveler, if you will. Flying to places like Smash in Canada and making his name. On the other side of the coin, we have someone that I carry very close to my heart. Someone I have much love and adoration for in the Lone Star Kurt Stallion. Now, Kurt Stallion was originally based out of Texas, moved to St. Louis, and actually slept on other wrestlers' floors while he got polished, if you will, by none other than Michael Elgin, who's currently over the G1 for New Japan. Now, Kurt has really made a claim for himself this year by being the guy who gets in his car. There's no airplane tickets. There's no first class for Kurt Stallion. Much like Texas, he's down and dirty. He gets in his car, he puts the miles in, and he puts the performances. He had a very, very good run in the Ring of Honor Top Prospect Tournament this year, going against, I believe it was Preston Quinn in the first round in an upset victory before falling to John Schuyler in the second round. He's made one more appearance after that against Myron Reed, while Myron defended the Crown of Glory Championship for Glory Pro at a Ring of Honor house show. And Kurt is the antithesis of a high flyer for the most part. Kurt's a guy who's going to go in there, he's going to beat you down. He has a body that wouldn't necessarily match the way he wrestles, and I mean that as a compliment. You see him, he's toned, he's got six-pack abs, taller, longer reach, but he wrestles like he's built like Stan Hansen. He wrestles like he's going to rip your head off like a Dick Murdoch. And when he goes, he's going to go full steam, utilizing such things as his torpedo kamikaze headbutt, looking for a quick knockout, or for his over-the-shoulder air raid crash onto his exposed kneecap, the buck off. And with that being said, as I said, he is the antithesis of a flyer, but once every blue moon, he's been known to go to the top rope with an opponent, hook them as if to do a German suplex, but actually moonsaults and then has his body weight crash down on them as if they're bunking Bronco. I think this matchup is going to be exciting. I think it'll be a spectacle. I think Kurt's real hope in this is to try to ground Cade as quick as he can, because if Cade can get up and moving, it's hard to stop him. He's like throwing a bouncy ball with all your strength in a racquetball court. Once it's gone, you don't know where you're going to get hit. Any thoughts on this match, Dan?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Stallion. I've heard a lot about him. I've only seen maybe one of his matches, so I'm not real familiar with his in-ring work, but I've heard so much hype about him. And I like that he wrestles a different style. The flashier stuff is more popular, but it's all about just doing what you do well and figuring that out. And so it seems like he's done that. And you mentioned he's got the motivation to get out there. If you're young and you really want it, you got nothing tying you down. There's really no excuses. Just get out there and get it like this guy is. He's an example for a lot of young guys. And with Cade, there's another guy I almost had booked for Anarchy one time. Something came up. But been watching him from afar and I've heard a lot of great things about him, in addition to seeing it, but about his character, etc. And with his high flying skill versus the mat-based bruiser style of Stallion, you mentioned that Stallion's going to want to try to ground him. Cade's going to want to stick and move. He's going to want to get in, get out, because if he gets caught by Stallion, he's going to be in trouble.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Before we get into the last three matches of the original tournament brackets, I am going to put myself over on this. For night 2, there's always open spaces for extra matches as we fill out the rest of the card to carry a full card for the second night. For this tournament, I've been booked along with two of my best friends, my tag team partner Nick Iggy, and our third piece of our Freebirds, the Blue-Eyed Devil Trip Cassidy, and we're going to be taking on the Hierarchy. Originally scheduled to be Murder One, Adrian Armour, and Iceberg. Unfortunately, Iceberg fell to some health issues and was unable to compete. As of this recording, there's been a replacement to the replacement made. Newest Hierarchy member Joe Black was going to be scheduled into it. Unfortunately, there's some circumstances that I don't feel free to talk about at this time on there. But now they've enlisted the Dog of War, O'Shea Edwards. O'Shea, trained by Robert Gibson, probably about every bit of 6'4", brick shithouse, strong, stout, and mean. Murder One's nefarious ways. I don't even know if they're seconded by Jimmy because he helped train Jimmy. So it's hard to it's hard to put words to it to give credit just how evil he can be. And then we get to Adrian Armour, and the whole issue of the match in its place. Adrian is very accomplished. He's had some phenomenal showings with guys like Donovan Dijak, and just a list upon list upon list of guys at AWE. He started to make his name and travel out there. He felt wronged by not being in this year's Scenic City Invitational, and it took to his fingers on the internet to air his grievances in what I felt was a very inappropriate way. And for myself, I'm very soft-spoken on the internet. I try to be a consummate professional when presenting myself on social media, but as a guy who has ate shit sandwich after shit sandwich myself, and did it in stride, knowing that that was the right way to do it. Adrian decided to do the exact opposite of that and air his grievances, to which I had made my feelings on the matter known and told Adrian that if he wanted a match so bad at SCI, that if he could find his testicles, then he could join me in the ring. Ace Rockwell took it upon himself, due to fan demand, to book that match, and booked it as a street fight, if I'm not mistaken, but I might be mistaken.
No, it's a street fight.
At a street fight for the tournament, with the Carnies versus the Hierarchy +1. As a guy that's seen Adrian grow in the business and has seen his attitude and his arrogance grow into it, personally, I feel that this will be a learning experience for him. Unfortunately, what we have to work against us is there's only 3 Carnies now. It's me, Nick, and Trip. The Hierarchy, on the other hand, is at an all-time high. Recruiting just 2 new members the other day, not including the other 2 or other 3 that are floating out there. There's a possibility for disaster written on our faces. But I know what I'm going to do in that match is do what we always do, fight like hell, and hopefully teach Adrian that running your mouth isn't always the best option. Any insight that you might have for that special attraction match on night 2?
Well, remember this. You, Nick, and Trip are a single-minded unit. You're not in it for a lot of the same reasons they are. So, Murder One, on the other hand, is I've known him for a lot of years. He's a good friend, but he is what he is, and he's got a reputation because of the things that he's done and the mayhem he's caused in the business. And he's very good at talking these young guys up and filling their head full of promises, and then they're ready to fight for him and they're ready to kill for him. So you're going to have to watch out for that. But on the plus side, that Edwards is a new guy. He's not part of their regular operation. I think with the recent ousting of Chip, their whole operation is kind of in disarray right now. You don't ever want to underestimate Murder One by any stretch of the imagination. You mentioned all the members, and it would be in a street fight. You could have somebody coming from the left, the right. You're going to need eyes in the back of your head. But remember that you guys are all on the same page, where as they kind of had the advantage last year in their match because they were single-minded. I feel like they're kind of losing focus of that, and that might be where you can stab that stake in the heart.
Honestly, in my heart of hearts, I almost want to apologize now because the level of violence that they're going to see in that match, I don't know, it'll be a different brand of violence than what's presented in the rest of the tournament. And for anybody who is faint of heart or is not a fan of human suffering, may want to go to the concession stand during that fight. But enough of that special attraction match for night 2. I did want to make it a point to mention that as we come back to the brackets of night 1 tournament. We have 3 matches left. Starting from the first one, though. Well, actually, no. I'm gonna save it for last because I think that's gonna be the one you'll have the most to say about. And I think it's going to be something that I can chime in on also. So we'll hold off on that one for a second, and we'll go to a different match. The Bone Collector, Dominic Garini versus Eric Royal. Eric Royal is the ace of the Mid-Atlantic. He has strong showings going. I want to say he's still undefeated, but he might have just taken his first loss over at Nova Pro, based out of the Northern Virginia area, almost outside on the outskirts of D.C. You want to talk about a guy, I mean, you look at his contemporaries, your Andrew Everett's, your Cedric Alexander's, your Trevor Lee's, commonly associated with CWF Mid-Atlantic, which is a shout-out to Stutzy. I believe we'll see him this weekend. Eric Royal is another smash-mouth wrestler, and that's the best way I can put it. You're going to see a man who understands how to utilize his size and utilize it in ways that are going to behoove him. He's a bigger dude, but it's not like watching, a Samoan SWAT member or Umaga. He has so many different attacks that he uses that are just so unique to him. his big clipping of the knee, the big leaping claw STO like head jam, and then he has one move that I don't even know if most people pick up on, but he on an opponent that's crouched on all fours on their knees and hands, like in a table fashion, he runs and scoops them like a running bulldozer. He is very, very strong and well versed. Even if people aren't familiar with him, he's a vet and he's good. Some would even compare him. How people often say that Chip Day is the South's best kept secret. I believe that to hold true for Eric Royal in the mid-Atlantic area. Bone Collector Dom Guarini, another close friend of mine. He stayed at my house. He comes from an MMA background, not unfamiliar to someone like a Matt Riddle. He was actually ranked 10th in the world in jiu-jitsu under his discipline, and that's official. That's not some bullshit moniker that people throw on people. That is backed by statistics. That's backed by wins. That's backed by tap outs. That's backed by knockouts. He is deadly. He's been in the business for, I want to say, 2 to 3 years now. But looking at the opponents that he's wrestled, he recently had a match at Evolve against Alex Daniels based on a seminar that WWN Live had happened. But at AIW, his home base of operations, where he was trained by Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae, he's had matches with Tracy Williams, Hot Sauce. He's had matches with Zack Sabre Jr. He's had matches with BJ Whitmer in BJ's last match on the Indies. And that involved all the plunder. I'm talking about a man who wears no shoes in a wrestling ring going over tacks. Dominic Guarini, pound for pound, is made of grit. He is hell inside of a judo man's body. If there was a modern equivalent of the background and intensity of a guy like Dan Severn or Ken Shamrock inside of independent wrestling, outside of a Matt Riddle, it would be Dominic Guarini. I think a lot of people are hoping they're going to see some kind of crossover between Dominic and Matt Riddle. But knowing Eric Royal, the ace of the Mid-Atlantic like I do, I don't see him giving Dominic that luxury. Any thoughts or inputs on this match?
I'm very excited to see it. And Stutzy from CWF Mid-Atlantic will be joining me in the broadcast booth along with his regular partner from CWF Mid-Atlantic, Cecil Miller. We'll probably be rotating in and out some just to make sure, since there's so many matches on these 2 nights, that we all get a breather. But I know Eric Royal is the ace for CWF Mid-Atlantic, and I've seen him a couple of times. But of all the competitors, I'm most unfamiliar with these 2. Based on what you said about Greeny and what I've heard about it from other people, and I've seen a lot of the hype from AIW about him, I'm very excited to see him apply some of that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I think that this might be, I would say, this is one of the top sleeper matches of the night. I think that my true pick for the sleeper match of the night is going to come at the end of the brackets here when we get to it. But a match that is not to be slept on also is going to be the next match. Is going to be Jason the Gift Kincaid and Torque. Now, Torque's someone that I'm unfamiliar with. If I'm not mistaken, he was in the Scenic City Rumble against Anthony Henry and had a strong showing, where a lot of people thought that was going to be a breeze by for Anthony. A quick little backstory on Jason Kincaid. I've known him since I broke in. He's been a journeyman since as long as I've known him. Currently really pushing through the ranks of Evolve. He's found this unique Buddhist Zen-like mentality and a oneness or calmness with himself, where he's at peace at all times during a match, and the next thing you know, he's, almost, I don't want to say peaceful protesting, but using people's own aggression against them and putting them in compromising positions. He'll hit you with a laundry list of innovative moves that he's come up with. I mean, you never see the same move really twice unless it's something that Jason's done a lot of business with. Most likely looking for the compassionate release in this match. That's going to be his arms locked behind his back while he maintains a dragon sleeper on an opponent. Internationally traveled, former Ring of Honor top prospect, tournament participant, current WWN Live superstar. Now, Torque, I'm kind of, from what I know of Torque, he's a local guy that has taken a lot of mentoring from people in his area to heart and has really applied himself in the last 2 to 3 years of wrestling, doing the seminars, absorbing as much knowledge as he can. What can you tell me about Torque, or for anyone listening to this that's unfamiliar with him?
So Torque, yeah, he's one of those guys that's been around the area for several years, but was just a guy for so many years. You know, just a guy. You would see him on shows in like northeast or northwest Georgia, like the Blue Ridge, Dalton area, Rome, Chatsworth. You know, that sort of neck of the woods is sort of where he hung out, and he got in with Big Wood, who polished his training up a little bit and became a regular for his Deep Southern Championship Wrestling, which at this point has pretty much evolved into Georgia Premier Wrestling. And Torque slowly climbed the ranks there. Like you mentioned, he took advantage of every single opportunity that came his way. He then went up to the Scenic City Rumble and had that great showing with Anthony Henry and earned his spot in the tournament. But it had been a slow climb for him for the last couple of years, but it was steady. You know, he was putting on great match after great match, showing he was a consummate underdog, one of the hardest workers anywhere, and recently showed he's got a lot of personality. He recently debuted on Anarchy Television, and his shtick there is it's similar to like a Crash Holly, Jamie Noble, like this heel that thinks he's a giant, but he's very small, actually. But in the SCI, he's more of the gritty underdog, and that's what we're going to see here. I think you're going to be impressed with the fight in Torque, because this is a guy who just doesn't give up. He's just totally unassuming when he gets in the ring. He's in shape. He looks like a wrestler, but he's a little short guy. Man, he's one of the most passionate wrestlers you might see in the tournament. And Jason Kincaid got to call a couple of his matches for different promotions, and I always enjoy watching him. I think he may have one of the most unique styles in all of the sport. Like, the way he moves is almost like a spider. He's just so fluid in everything he does, and I really actually love his interviews. I think there's not a lot of great interviews anymore, and he's one of them. And I think Torque's going to have his hands full with Kincaid. He's faced some tough challenges, but I don't know if he's ever faced anyone as unorthodox as Kincaid, rather.
And one thing about Torque, as we're talking about it, normally in tournaments, there's always everybody's gunning to win, but in the back of your mind, you're also gunning to say, hey, I belong in this field. Whether I win or lose, I belong with the best wrestlers in all of the United States, all of the world. And Torque could very well have a coming out party in this tournament. Torque could very well turn some eyes, turn some attention his way, much like Anthony Henry did in the first one. And that there's something to be said for that. For someone like myself who I've seen the name, Dylan Hales has talked him up quite a bit to me and told me, hey, trust me, this guy is awesome. You know, I know that I'm going to be watching this match because I want to see Dylan never gives his stamp of approval on a guy unless he 1000% believes in it, and I've never seen Dylan be wrong in the history of our friendship. Torque has a chance right now because, and before we get to this final match, I think this is something that I should have stated earlier. We're talking about, you know, the SCI, something that's grown and grown over the years. Someone who has purchased tickets is coming here asked me about it while we were up in an undisclosed area wrestling, and he said, "What's it like down there?" And I told him it's somewhere between Pro Wrestling Woodstock and Pro Wrestling Bohemian Grove, because you have a who's in the crowd. We're talking about bookers, we're talking about referees, we're talking about promoters, we're talking about fans whose voices carry weight in wrestling. And a good showing at the SCI, whether you win or lose, could carry you to the next booking, the next level of indie success. And I think that's an important factor, and that's actually something that comes into this next matchup. In the last matchup of the initial brackets here, two gentlemen related by blood that you're very familiar with, that I myself am familiar with too. Matt Lynch, previously Matt Fortune, and Joey Lynch, the Lynch Mob, the Lynch Brothers. Great tag team. bitter rivals, blood relatives. And when you're looking at the SCIs, Joey Lynch has continually put on performance after performance after performance that got him noticed. Making appearances at places like PWX over in Carolina, making appearances at CZW up in the north, making appearances for freelance wrestling in Chicago, based off his performances at SCI. Now, anyone who has seen Joey wrestle in the past could say, man, where has this guy been hiding? But they can't really say that about Joey anymore, because look at him. Look where he's gone the last year, 2 years. Look what he's doing over at Mucha Lucha. And then you have his brother. Now, Matt, known for having a bad attitude, tends to flirt a little bit more on the heel side than Joey has, because Joey has this innate quality that makes you want to like him, while Matt has this ability to crawl under your skin. When they can get on the same page as a tag team, as a man that's been on the other side of the ring with them, however you want to phrase that, they continue to be one of our toughest challenges to secure wins, placed against each other. Now, I know they've had history throughout the Chattanooga area before, but this is a different circumstance surrounding it. Joey is a guy that's became synonymous with SCI. Matt, maybe not so much. Joey's gone up for the glitz and glamour in the singles bookings. Matt, maybe not so much. Maybe there's some animosity there. Maybe there's some kind of built-in frustration for Matt to prove himself. Maybe Matt, where he previously would have gone to win a match, maybe he's going to make a statement in this SCI that says, hey, you've slept on me on this long. I'm going to be the Lynch brother you remember in this tournament. I'm going to be just as good, if not better, than Joey. It's a dynamic old as time, but often not seen as much today, because you don't see true blood relatives in wrestling. I would say one of the closest equivalents to Bret and Owen Hart that we'll get in our lifetime, as far as independent wrestling goes in our area. But for you, what dynamics are you looking for in this match? I think that this, hands down, is the sleeper match of the night. While everyone's talking about these unique pairings, this match specifically is the one I want to see, because Matt has so much to prove in this, and Joey's not going to let that go away out of his hands easily.
Yeah, he does. Matt has proven himself in tag teams with Joey. They've had a lot of success as a Lynch Mob, won a lot of tag titles all over the region. Really, the story's interesting between them, because if you followed all the way back to Empire, which much of that footage is who knows where now, but they started as rivals at Empire and had a feud that lasted for the duration of the promotion. And on the last big event at Empire Wrestling, they finally had their blow-off to their years-long feud there. Matt Fortune had denied the Lynch family name and, been just a general asshole, and Joey had defended the family's honor. And eventually they had their big bloody blowout, and Joey won, and Matt put the grudge behind him, and they hugged, and Empire closed with the Lynch Mob reuniting. And then they came to Anarchy as a tag team and won the tag team titles pretty quickly, and used that as a platform to go to Mucha Lucha and some other places that they ended up getting some success as a tag team. But exactly what you said, here we are, right back to the SCI, right back in Chattanooga. So this story of them being apart and coming back together and having a run, and now they're right back at odds again. And all those old wounds are getting ripped right back open, if you don't mind me saying.
I think it's a neat match to have in the tournament. For people who were fans of Empire and wrestling of the area, it's a not a memento, but it's a touchstone for them. It's, hey, there are all these faces I don't recognize, but I do recognize both of them, and I do know that this match is going to be hard hitting. We got to wrestle in AWE while they were starting to team more on a consistent basis right before they went over to Why We Wrestle. Joey, actually, if I'm not mistaken, booked to go down to Mexico as part of Powerbomb.tv's independent title or their championship that'll go throughout their Fed family. As someone, I'm very lucky to not be related to anyone in wrestling, whether it's through blood or marriage or anything else like that, because inherently I would see that and I would think, fuck, that should be me. you know, and I don't know if that's going to weigh on Matt's brain during this match. I mean, realistically, with them teaming, you know, how far would he be willing to go? And I don't mean that as, oh, I don't want to hurt my brother because we've got a team tomorrow, but like, how far would you really be willing to go? Because if Joey Lynch not only loses this match, but if Joey Lynch gets hurt or something like that, you're talking about missed bookings and Matt back to himself at square one. Maybe gunning to go to his Powerbomb.tv spot for Joey. Maybe going back to the Matt Fortune that I was more acclimated with at Empire with my dealings there. I mean, there's just so many different dynamics and there's just so much rich history built into that and so many outlying factors. I mean, to me, it's the most intriguing match outside of Riddle and Tank in the first round pairings.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm really excited to see them lock horns again now with the stakes higher than they've ever been. And knowing what they've done to each other previously when the stakes were high, but not half as high as they're going to be come this weekend. Very exciting stuff.
Absolutely. And then before we get out of here, a couple quick things. This SCI is going to be a little bit different. I know last year a lot of us, I was not there, but a lot of my friends that were there mentioned that the wonderful City Cafe that normally feeds both fans and wrestlers alike after the show, where we all get grub, share stories, laughs, curse words, ribs, and everything in between. I know that I'm looking forward to that. Now, there was a panel with Tank, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, last year. This year, SCIs has exploded with all kinds of different stuff. Papa Hales, Dylan Hales' father, and beloved Twitter personality of all of independent and professional wrestling in general, has gained a list together between Q&A panels, shoots, interviews, a potential costume ball with people dressing as their favorite wrestlers, and Carney games as we bring out our world famous beanbag toss game. Make a bag in a hole, win a prize. If not, keep paying till you win. Among a multitude of other things. My friends over from Kick Out at 2 are going to be at this year's tournament. I know we're doing a live podcast with them with a live Q&A inside of their hotel room in vein of much or many house rock, punk rock shows. I'm sure that'll get pretty loud and wild. I'm sure I'll be feeling really good by that point too, so to answer some fun questions. As you mentioned earlier, we got Studsy and Cecil coming down from CWF Mid-Atlantic, doing a 3-man booth this year, alternating in and out, so hopefully none of you lose your voice. I would say I couldn't ask for a better pairing to call my match. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I want all three. But hopefully it plays out well with that. The SCI is all about bringing together not just the Southeast best wrestlers, not just the best wrestlers in the nation, but the best fans and the best personalities, the best bookers, promoters, ring announcers. I mean, you name it. It is about unity. It is about fun. It is about keeping wrestling the way it should be. It's vacation. It's holidays. It's theme parks. It's Woodstock and Bohemian Grove all rolled up in one. Is there anything you'd like to touch on as far as that goes? Because besides the tournament, the whole weekend itself is now taking a life of its own. Much like Woodstock wasn't even just about the bands playing as much as the experience of going to Woodstock.
Yeah, I mean, if they keep growing at this rate, if the event keeps growing, that hotel is not going to hold everybody or the activities, because it was pretty packed last year, and I'm pretty sure it sold out this year. But I know there are some adjacent hotels with some rooms still available. But I love the concept of the fan convention. Almost reminiscent of the old Smoky Mountain Fan Week, that was kind of Al Gettz's original ideas, and Papa Hales just kind of took it and ran with it and has done more than Al ever envisioned. You know, he was just like, okay, let's get together and have a couple of Q&As. So like me and Al and Chris Hero did a podcast, and then Tank and Matt Riddle did a podcast, and like, you know, there was just a few things. But now this year, like you said, he's got activities lined up all day. It's humbling that the international and national wrestling community would want to come to our little town to be part of this event, and to include the Southern wrestling standouts in the greater wrestling vernacular and dialogue, which has long been overdue. It's awesome. It's awesome to see wrestling celebrated that. It's something we all love. We can all get together, make a lot of new friends, see a lot of new faces, see old faces that we haven't seen in a while. The camaraderie. I'm looking forward to the camaraderie as much as I've got friends from the business traveling in from all over. People coming to stay at my house. Like, it's gonna be a large fucking time.
Dude, there are people, I literally saw on Twitter someone from Australia, someone from, I want to say it was England, I couldn't tell you what part of England, flying in to Chattanooga, Tennessee. The whole mission statement of SCI about getting people to look at Southern wrestling with a softness in their hearts and eyes is a mission statement much like Nick Iggy's and mine. When Ace asked us to be part of the Rumble and then to be part of SCI this year, I told him that it was my honor to, because I believe that in my heart of hearts. Because for me, it was the first time one of the first times I felt that people really wanted to change the opinion of what was capable for independent wrestling in the South. And that's something that I've tried to take with me while traveling as a Southern wrestling tag team all over the nation. And now people from all over the nation are traveling to the wrestling roots. And it's special and it's beautiful and it's going to be a hell of a good time. For anyone that doesn't have tickets, real quick, before we head out of here, make sure that you contact Dylan Hales on Twitter at Dylan Waco, or send him an email at dylanwaco@gmail.com. The Scenic City Invitational.
Actually, not to cut you off there, but I think he tweeted just a little bit ago that pre-sales were closed.
Oh, it's going to be walk-up only then.
Because they sold a lot of pre-sales. A lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you're successful. But for anyone wanting to come in, the Scenic City Invitational takes place August 4th and 5th at East Hamilton High School in Ottawa, Tennessee. Tickets for the 2-day events are no longer available through Dylan Hales, but you will have to go to the door. I'm unsure about floor seats and how that's gone. General admission and the bleacher seats is going to be $10 per day, I believe, and I believe that's still available. With that being said, at the end of my podcast, of every podcast that I do, I have a little game, and it's a rigged game because I'm a carny, and it's my podcast, and that's what I do. Normally, for wrestlers, I would say, hey, give us 1 to 2 matches for someone that has no idea who you are, what you do, and maybe it's a story, maybe it's a match, but it's a defining moment to where they can get you in a nutshell. And since this is a tournament edition, we're going to do that with 1 or 2 moments and or matches that you feel define the SCI. With that being said, there are rules to this game and they're not in your favor. Why? Because it's my fucking podcast. You can't say the same answers that I've said, and normally I'll go on and disbar a couple other ones too, just because I'm that kind of asshole when it comes to my podcast. But for someone unfamiliar with SCI that wants to get a crash course in the meaning of it, what would that be for you? But before you answer, I'm personally going to go first. Now I'm going to go on and I'm going to throw out Gunnar Miller winning it because, we've covered that one in depth. So I got to take the easy answer off the board. I'm going to go on and I'm going to take off Gunnar Jimmy too because we covered that from SCI 1. I'm going to take off Tank and Congo from SCI 1. And I'm also going to take away Anthony Henry and Jimmy Ray from Night 1 too. Why? Because that's going to be one of my answers. For someone that was unfamiliar with Anthony Henry, to see him have that level of performance with Jimmy Ray, with the air raid crashing on the apron and all the shenanigans that went into the match, I think that was a coming out party for Anthony Henry, and I believe that is truly the purpose of a thing like SCI. I'm also going to take away one of my favorite matches from SCI Year 2 in Chip Do or Die Motherfucking Day versus Who's Your Hero, Chris Hero. That was hands down, you want to talk about hard, beat your dick in the dirt hitting match. To me, that was that match. Chip obviously lost that match while Chris Hero went on to the finals, but
for someone that prides himself on his striking as much as Chip Day does, to go against literally there, in my opinion, there's probably no one better in the world today on paper than Chris Hero when it comes to throwing kicks, strikes, or elbows or anything in between. And for Chip to stand toe to toe with Chris, to almost go to the distance, but to come up short by the hair on the back of his neck was really, really special. I know that as a jaded, not jaded, but as a wrestler, as a performer inside of the business, sometimes I have a hard time not being analytical while watching matches. Sometimes I'm breaking things down and I lose the specialness that makes a match. While watching that match, I felt like I was watching Chris Hero, and it was like watching Chris Hero wrestle for the first time all over again. And it was watching someone that was not your guy, because Chip and I have a storied rivalry that's gone on for years now, but watching someone you know, someone you've seen grow in the business, go toe to toe with best in the world, quote unquote gods, and showing, damn it, I almost had it. And maybe if this match went another 5 minutes, the outcome would be different, or would have been different. So I'm going to go on and take all those off the board for you, and now you're left with your choices from SCI 1 or SCI 2 of what you feel summarizes the tournament as a whole. Or crash.
And I get 2 picks.
You get 2 picks.
Okay. So one, I'm actually going to go with Kyle Matthews and Chris Hero from night 1 of SCI 2. For many of the same reasons, but also I think it defines the SCI in that you have a guy who's been an established star here in the region for years, who's gone out and done other things. Kyle worked Chikara and FIP and 01 in Japan, and traveled all over the country with Ted Allen, who was the man who trained Arn Anderson, who was also Kyle's mentor. So Kyle has this great reputation, and everyone around here thought for years he was one of the best workers in the business. But for some reason, he just never caught on the greater national level. He was a guy who was in and out, but was never a guy promotion would bring in and push. He was always guaranteed to give a guy a good match, but he was never a guy that they would put a machine behind. So you have this incumbent for the region versus the incumbent indie legend, the guy who's been on the scene all the way back to breaking in with CM Punk, and who's been to the dance and back, and has gone to Europe and trained in the dungeons there, and gone to Japan and trained in the dojos and learned more styles than any guy has ever possibly learned in professional wrestling. And you took those 2 styles together, and I thought it was just beautiful, and it was a perfect way to main event night 1 of the larger year 2. It was a great statement for that year's event.
Absolutely. I'd actually seen that match as well. And I think it was, for Kyle, you had mentioned all the accolades that he had, but so true in the fact that he's always good enough to be there, but has never had someone pull the trigger on him. He's also done matches for Ring of Honor. I saw a TV match that he had with Michael Elgin that Kyle had gotten more in on Elgin as a relative unknown to the Ring of Honor fan base, and I'd seen some of their normal guys do. I mean, it was a phenomenal showing from Kyle. And the same thing happened with Evolve. I think he actually recently went down for a style battle at WWN Live. But again, the powers that be over at WWN Live, not willing to pull the trigger, or maybe it was ill timing. Kyle's another one of those guys that's just, I mean, you meet a lot of, and I'm not going to even try to censor my words. You meet a lot of shitty fucking people in wrestling, and you meet a guy like Kyle Matthews. And for me, I met him so early on. My first out-of-state booking was at a show that Kyle was, and I was scared shitless. I was scared to even talk to people. And Kyle came up to me and asked me how long I'd been working, and I said, I think maybe like 8 or 9 months at the time, something like that. And he goes, "Oh man, no wonder you're acting like that. Come on, let's go hang out." And I, unbeknownst to me, that Kyle had done all this and seen all this at the time. And he would sit me under this tarp with him, and we'd lie on our stomachs peeking through. And the way that he would explain things that I wouldn't even pick up on and why they were important still sit with me to this day. I was happy with that match with him and Hero, because that was a match that a guy like Kyle deserved, and if no one else would give him that opportunity, how fitting that it was at SCI, and I know that was one of my favorite Kyle moments too, and even thinking about it now, I almost wish I would have taken it off the table. Hopefully we'll see Kyle maybe show his face sometime on night 2 on that non-tournament action, although I don't think anything's announced. Obviously, since he's a new father, he spends a lot of time at home with his wonderful daughter and his wonderful wife, and he continues to embody the exception of pro wrestling. In a world of shitbags, it's okay to be a good, honest, kind, polite, hardworking dude. And whether someone pulls a trigger on you or not, you deserve happiness and you deserve to belong with the best. Sorry, I had to go on my Kyle Matthews tangent there, because there's like I said earlier, there's not many people I think more highly than I do Kyle. You know, I just.
Oh yeah, he's one of my dearest friends in the business. I've known him for well over a decade. He's just one of the great human beings in the sport, like, for sure.
Absolutely. And now you've got one more match on this. What is it going to be, or moment? It could be either one. But before we close out, what do you have as your secondary pick to really put home? Hey, SCI is something you should see and something you should be lucky to be at.
You know, if you're saying moments and not matches, I've got a moment, and it's you put part of the moment off the table, but I'm going a little bit after that moment. You see, so what I will go is not Gunnar Miller winning the tournament, but the moment where Matt Riddle comes in and hands Gunnar Miller the trophy.
That is good. That is very good.
That was a moment. Like, the people saw it, they buzzed, and now if you look at the bracket, potential is there for that matchup in round 2. So the people saw it, they might want it. Of course, they don't want Tank to go out in the first round. So, interesting. It's always fun when you can put fans at odds with themselves on what they want. That means you're doing something right.
And not only that, I mean, winning the tournament itself was a special moment for Gunnar. I don't think I'm saying anything that hasn't been well noted, that his night 1 of year 2 of SCI wasn't his greatest outing, but he rose above and got the end result and reaction that he needed at the end of night 2. And with Matt Riddle again being the face of independent professional wrestling in a lot of people's eyes, at least for followers of WWN Live, to see that validation of not just him getting the trophy, but being handed by Riddle, and Riddle saying, "Yeah, you earned this tonight. Here you go." That's a very heavy defining moment, and you know, for some guys that would be the defining moment of their career. Gunnar again being not young or green, but being younger in the business, being a younger aged gentleman, still has tons of miles to go, and he's already achieved that. That didn't even cross my mind while we were going down the bracket breakdown earlier, that assuming that Matt Riddle goes on and beats Tank, which I don't even know if it's physically possible, because God knows Tank can literally walk to hell and back and then laugh afterwards. Then you've got him and Gunnar. You got to figure on match 2, if Matt Riddle were to beat Tank, that probably would make him the greatest villain that ever walked in Chattanooga, at least as Tojo Yamamoto, right? I mean, his blood will be called for, and now Gunnar in opposition to that. Good God, like I'm getting fired up thinking about the possibilities, because SCI gets me like that. Dan, before we get out of here, what if you will tell all the wonderful people who are listening to this podcast on ProWrestlingPonderings.com or through iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all those platforms, if they wanted to find you, where would they do that on social media? Via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, smoke signal, string phones connected to toucans. How can they reach you?
I'm pretty accessible on the social media. I am on Twitter at Dragons Rejects. That's Dragon like Dan the Dragon Wilson, apostrophe S, no apostrophe, but Rejects like the Devil's Rejects. So I kind of combined the 2 eras, the Dragon and the Reverend. Dragons Rejects on Twitter. You can also keep up with what I'm doing. Mainly, most of my duties now, beyond consulting on the SCI and occasional commentary booking here and there, I'm heading up the entire production of Anarchy Wrestling as the booker and executive producer of the television show. And so follow us over at Anarchy Landmark on Twitter to see what we're doing there. You can also find me on Facebook.com/Rev Dan the Dragon Wilson, and I'm on Instagram as well at Dragons Rejects. And you can check out Anarchy on PowerBomb.tv every second and fourth Saturday of the month. The new episode is usually up within the next couple of days. And it's only $9.99 a month to subscribe, and you get a 10-day free trial. You get great wrestling from all over the country, not only including Anarchy, but including the SCI events. SCI Year 1 and Year 2 and the Scenic City Rumble are also on PowerBomb.tv.
That has to be the cleanest plug I've ever had in the history of my podcast. I was actually going to cover following Anarchy on PowerBomb TV, but you already beat me to it. Again, total pro, one of my favorite people. Thank you so much for being on Dog Days today. Hopefully this will be up by tomorrow so people can listen to this while they make their journeys, their pilgrimages down to the beautiful Chattanooga area, down to Ottawa. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but Ottawa, Tennessee, for the best 2 days of professional wrestling that you can get. Come join us. Join Dan. Getting tongue-tied. Join Dan, myself, the competitors in the tournament, the villainous hierarchy, all the wonderful fans that you converse on Twitter. You can meet them in real life and join in all of the fun and games provided through Papa Hales. The Scenic City Invitational, again, August 4th and 5th. And if you can't make it, if you can't join us, sign up at powerbomb.tv. Pay that $9.99, and while you're enjoying Anarchy Wrestling, get caught up on the past Scenic City Invitational tournaments, the Scenic City Rumble, and all kinds of great wrestling. For all the guys you might discover in the tournament over this or previous weekends, I can almost guarantee they have other matches from other feds on powerbomb.tv. Dan, thank you so much, man. I will talk to you soon, and I will see you a little bit after that.
See you this weekend, man. Thank you so much for having me, and have a good night.
You too now.
Following podcast was brought to you by Pro Wrestling Ponderings. Dog Days would like to remind you to be polite, be kind, and that we are all in this together. Until next time, this has been Pro Wrestling Ponderings presents Kerry Awful in Dog Days.